Elsie.
And I'm Debbie.
And we're Two Sisters Southern Cooking.
We are making a sweet potato cobbler.
Yes. So we had a follower that contacted us and said, how do you make your sweet potato cobbler? So I gave her a recipe that we had, and she said that her grandma used to make it, and she had put like little pieces of dough down into the mix. And then she would pour a little bit of milk when it was all done, and inside of it she would pull back the crust. We're not going to do that though, but that is an option where you take probably like maybe a little bit, how much do you think, maybe a 2 cup maybe, or a cup or a 2 of dough, loose dough, and just put it down in there. Like do like drop dough in there. And then I would say if you were going to pour milk inside of it like that lady's recipe, I would say, what do you think, maybe about
a half a cup,
maybe, or less, probably maybe a 1/4 of a cup of milk,
and just drizzle it. Pick your pastry up and drizzle it inside.
Yeah.
So what are we using for a top? We're using puff pastry, right?
Yes, we are. Wanted to give you something other than just crust. Now, normally people use the regular pie dough.
And that would work.
But we're going to use the puff pastry because we're going to put sugar on top of ours and sprinkle it. Now, normally people put milk, like a milk wash on top of it, and then put sugar on it. But we're just going to do an egg wash, and then put the sugar on top of it. So
most of this recipe is going to be done on the stove and then put right straight into the oven. So we're going to go get started at the stove. So follow us to the stove and we'll get started. All right. All right, y'all. We are at the stove. I put a teaspoon of salt in this water. I put enough water in here to just cover them. And we're going to let them come to a boil and cook for 7 to 10 minutes.
So this is what, 4 pounds?
Yes.
Of sweet potatoes.
Yes.
These are the Mississippi Reds.
Yes. The best sweet potato I ever ate.
They have minimal strings in them, guys.
Yeah.
So if you are able to find them in your grocer or in your local produce stand, get them. They're the best sweet potatoes I've ever had. And they're not stringy like the normal Georgia sweet potatoes or wherever.
Or North Carolina even is stringy.
It's stringy, yeah. Arkansas, they're all stringy, but the Mississippi Reds, I don't know if it has something to do with the environment in which they grow them in. I don't know.
Possibly.
Or it could be their ingredients that, that's in the seed. I don't know, but they are so good. All right, so they're all in here now. I'm going to bring it to a boil, and then we're going to cook them for 7 to 10 minutes. They're not going to be mushy. They're not going to be really soft. They're still going to have a little firmness to them because we're going to finish it off in the oven. Perfect. All right, guys. They have been at a full boil for 7 minutes, and they are fork tender. They're not totally tender, but they're just the right consistency. So I'm turning the burner off, and we're going to get started with the next process. We're going to save 2 cups of the fluid here from the potatoes, and we're going to make almost like a roux, basically, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, because we have flour.
Yeah, so we're going to make with a bunch of seasonings, and then we're going to put them all in the same pot together, and then we're going to put butter in, and then we're going to put the whole sweet potato cobbler combination into the dish, and then we're going to put the
all right, I'm going
crust on the top.
I'm going to take some of these out so I can get a measuring cup in there to get some of this liquid. That way I free up a little room. I think I can get that down in there now.
Oh, that looks so good, and it smells so good. you should smell the seasonings that we're going to put into the syrup. That's the lack of a better word. It's the syrup. So I'm going to use my ladle to get a little more. Okay. All right, so we got our 2 cups of fluid. So now I'm going to drain this. Put the lid back on. I love my little pot that has the drain holes in it. I'm jealous. Mom didn't get me one. You're getting one for Christmas. All right, guys, we're going to drain these off, and then we'll come back with the next step, which is making the syrup.
So I'm taking the reserved liquid that I just took from the sweet potatoes, and I'm just going to start adding in all our ingredients. We have granulated sugar and brown sugar, and we have a lot of cinnamon and nutmeg
And cloves.
And we have our flour. That's going to give it the thickening consistency. And vanilla. And I'm going to whisk this around. And then we'll add in our butter in a minute after all this sugar dissolves.
That smells so good. It smells like fall.
Yeah, I love fall's my favorite season. And the second season would be spring. I love when all this stuff starts to bloom.
You want to make sure that the clumps of the flour has been well incorporated, so we don't put like clumps into our dish.
Okay, we have all our sugar is melted, so we're going to put in our butter.
That's our homemade butter we made last week, actually.
This will melt down, and then we'll pour it back over our sweet potatoes, and we're going to use a strainer just in case any of these flour bits that may not dissolve in here. We don't want them to go in our cobbler, so we're going to put it through a strainer.
And this I highly recommend for anybody else that's doing this. Now once we pour this over top, we're going to let this to continue to cook until the syrup bubbles over top of our potatoes. And then after that, then we're going to place our potatoes inside of our baking dish, and then we're going to cover it with our puff pastry crust.
This is thickening up really nicely. Our butter's about melted.
And there's nothing quite like the taste of homemade butter too. It just adds so much flavor. If you don't have homemade butter, it's okay. Just use regular butter, but we use salted butter.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready to...
I'm almost thinking that we probably don't need to...
Yeah, I don't think you
I
do.
don't think you're gonna... When we can strain it, but I don't think you're gonna have that much of the flour.
Yeah.
All right. Look at that. Oh my gosh. It smells heavenly. So we're going to put this back on the heat here, and we're going to let it cook. So there was quite a bit of little bits of flour there. Rather than having that all in our dish.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to cut this back on. We're going to bring this up to temp and let it boil. We're going to continue to cook it for a little bit longer. And then we'll let you guys see it when we're ready to pour it into our dish and put our puff pastry on top of it.
Okay, y'all, it is bubbling up and over our sweet potatoes. So now we're going to start assembling it into our 9x13 pan.
So we'll meet you at the prep station.
Now we're going to start assembling this. And I'm going to try not to break them up when I start layering them in there.
Oh, it smells heavenly,
It
guys.
does. It really does.
Then once she does that, then we're going to pour the syrup over top of it. And then we'll put our puff pastry on top. We're going to put like a little egg wash on it and sprinkle it with sugar. You can do the turbinado sugar or you can do granulated. We're just doing granulated. Nothing fancy. This is almost like a dessert, guys. This is really,
Yeah.
even though it's considered a dish, it's almost like a dessert because it's so, oh, the smell. My mouth is watering. So good. You're using 4 pounds of the sweet potatoes. And these are going to be nice and tender when they're done. I mean, totally nice and tender. Look at that. Just insane. So I'm pretty excited because we are going apple picking tomorrow in Ellijay, Georgia. So we get to ride on the back of a tractor. When was the last time you were on a tractor?
I had to be a kid.
Yeah, we had a tractor. We had one of those old Ford tractors that was faded green. Do y'all remember those? It was like a, I'm sure it was a darker green when it was brand new, but when we had it, it was like this old faded green. And it was that was a hard-working tractor because we tilled the groves with it and we tilled our garden and everything. And we had a huge garden when we were growing up.
Yeah, we did.
Because we actually sold our fruits and vegetables at a produce stand. Kind of like similar to what you're doing now.
Yeah, it wasn't as big as what we do now, but it was right in the front of our grandpa's property.
Yes. And guess who had to mind the fruit stand?
I
We
think all
did.
us kids, I found a picture the other day of me, you, I think it was Mary and Joycey and Glenn
Okay.
in front of it.
All right. So do you remember years ago where some foreign guy who had this fancy, it was a fancy camera. I think it was a Nikon. And he stopped with this camera and took pictures of us in front of the fruit stand.
I do remember that.
Because let me tell you, we lived a simple life. We didn't have fancy clothes. Our clothes was all made when we were growing up. So all our dresses and our skirts and everything and shirts was all made by Aunt Rachel. And we look like little Amish children. And this guy stopped because he never seen anything like us before. And he wanted to take pictures. So we posed in front of the fruit stand. I told somebody, I bet we're probably in some National Geographic magazine somewhere because this exotic man with this fancy camera came by and took our picture because he was like, I've never seen anybody like you before. We were just little country bumpkin kids. We didn't even ask our parents if it was okay. We just like posed and did our thing.
All right, I'm gonna pour the rest of the.
You know, thinking back now, it probably would not have been the safest thing to do, is to do what we did.
No,
But
but it was a simpler time back then.
it sure was. Back in the 70s, it was definitely a simpler time.
Especially living out in the country.
Yes, but we lived on a main highway, so when we had, we lived off of Highway 415, our farm was there, and that was, you know, we lived right there, so our citrus stand, our fruit stand, our vegetable stand was right there on the highway, but we had property that went back like at least a mile or so back into the back of the, you know, the grove and the all of that. So all right, did you burn yourself?
No, I'm wiping my finger off
Okay,
on my apron.
all right. I'm just going to just kind of wrap it around the edge. It was a simpler time though then.
Yeah, way simpler.
We had so much fun growing up. We had old tires that we used to race each other through the grove.
Remember the time it rained so much that the ditch was filled with water and we had plywood out there and we were surfing?
Do you remember the time that we had Candy out there and we were wrestling with Candy and Candy was wrestling with us? And somebody said, "Stop, you're hurting her."
I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
So we're gonna make little vents in the top of this. And then we're going to brush it with our egg yolk. And we're gonna drizzle the sugar over top of it. So I guess we could do like 4 of them. Just to be able to vent, so it can vent out of the dough. Yeah, we lived a different life than what kids do nowadays.
We were always outside
We
playing.
never stayed in the house.
Once in a while we would go in Mary and Joyce's bedroom and we would read and pretend and
We thought we were Trixie Bell and Nancy Drew when we were kids. I remember you used to say you were Nancy Drew. Joycey was Trixie Belden. And you were Honey Wheeler.
I remember.
I think I ended up being a boy. I think I was one of the brothers.
I don't know. Who was Mary? I don't remember. I remember
Diana
Joy-
Lynch,
That's it.
because she actually looked like her.
I
Yes.
remember.
I don't know. Did y'all ever do that when you were a kid?
Pretend.
Yeah, and pretend that you were, a fictional character, and your imagination
We were
just
acting. We acted. I mean, we acted out stuff.
see. That's where my acting experience came from. That's where it all started, right in Mary and Joyce's room, where we were Honey Wheeler, Trixie Belden, Diana Lynch, and I think I was Trixie's brother. Remember him?
Yeah. What was his name?
Martin. Yeah, was it Martin?
I don't-
No, Dad was Martin. I can't remember
Yes.
her brother's name.
I don't know, but we had fun.
Yes, I think I ended up being the boy of the crew, of course. All right.
Well, who was Nancy Drew's?
Beth and oh gosh, now you're gonna make me think.
Because you might have been one of them too.
I was not. I never got, because I was the youngest, I never got to play a lead character in anything. My sisters and cousins all got the leads. I ended up being like this, like third party down the road. Either that or I ended up being a boy.
And we never had shoes on.
Never.
Never. We were
Never.
barefoot.
Never.
Even when it got cold out, which it didn't get as cold as like
Right,
other
because
places.
it was Florida.
But even when it got cold out, we were still running around barefoot.
Yep. We were always barefoot. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and pop this in the oven
For 20 minutes.
400 degrees, 25 minutes, and then we're going to have some delicious sweet potato cobbler. Thank you.
We'll see you in our next video.
Hi, I'm Elsie.
And I'm Debbie.
And we're Two Sisters Southern Cooking.
Please like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you.